Hello and welcome to the Breaking Free podcast. I'm your host, Nathan Francis. I'm very grateful and very excited to be joined by Mel, the homeopath. For those that don't know who Mel is obviously a homeopath, but she's so much more than that. She's a mother. She's a friend of mine, and I'm really interested in sharing her story and sharing her work with the world because this is the natural, ancient way of doing things, and a lot of people aren't aware of this stuff. And I'm really keen to delve into Mel and delve into her work because she's an awesome person and an amazing mother from what I've seen on her socials. So Mel, tell us about homeopathy. Tell us about you, and I'll just mute my microphone and you can just speak.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Nate. So telling people about homeopathy is, I freaking love it because most people, even Australians who are switched on to natural health, sort of like I was, still so many people do not know what it is. So I'll tell you what it is, how you can use it, and why in the last couple of years it has just gone batshit crazy. Like Excellent. For me, in my work, I could never have imagined it going this crazy. But so pretty much where it started for me was I was studying to be a naturopath. So yep, herbs, supplements, those things, pretty mainstream really these days. People know all about it. And my sister was chronically sick. So she was in and out of hospital from when we were 16 to like early 20s. And it was the sort of thing where for her, if she would have sex, she would end up with a UTI infection. So like urinary tract infection, that's not uncommon. But for her, it would progress to the bloodstream, this infection, and it would be so bad. So she would be in hospital on so many drugs, hooked up to an oxygen machine, just the whole thing. And she would be in there for like a week or two. And so this was like, if she had sex, that's a hospital trip. And the doctors, so our dad is just a general practitioner in Australia, but still, they've got good connections. So she had the best doctor at our local hospital, and their file on her after all these years, so thick, but they're just saying, we don't understand what your body is doing, why it's doing this. And so their treatment response for her was, you just need to be on antibiotics prophylactically for the rest of your life. Like you need to take an antibiotic every day to try and avoid an infection. But it's like she's 20, let's say like 21, 22 years old at this point. And she's, from all the drugs she's taking, she's now like bladder incontinent, couldn't even work a full-time job, which is like, for her, she's always been like a gangster, up here in like business. She's normally a PA to big dogs in real estate. And so for her, it was just crushing. Anyway, long story short, she tried all of the holistic things like naturopathics, acupuncture, good diet, everything. They just could not get rid of this underlying susceptibility there. And I always had this uni lecturer who would say to me like, oh, you'd love homeopathy, you should study homeopathy. Oh, wow. And because I'd never heard of it, I wrote it off. I'm like, yeah, I've never heard of it. It clearly sucks. But one day he said that to me and she was in hospital and I said, well, if you can cure my sister's chronic condition, I'll change my degree like tomorrow. And yeah, he met with her. And he spoke to her for like an hour and a half, took her whole case history, looked at like our families, like genetic inheritance, all of the things he could to gather all the info on her, gave her this bottle of like these drops that she just took under the tongue. And within 2 days, the bladder incontinence had stopped. She had like all these discharges coming out. Sorry, too much info, but insane response to just this, like these drops under the tongue. And wow. Just at the end, I'm like, what the F have you given her? And it was rooted in, so with homeopathy, and it's like, what is it? So it is an energetic system of medicine. If you're going to compare it to any other system, it's most like acupuncture in terms of, in acupuncture, you're going to stick needles in the body to direct the flow of energy towards certain areas. So say most of my work is in fertility. So in acupuncture, you're going to direct the flow of energy towards the reproductive organs, kickstart the ovaries, get those hormones in balance. So that's why you can see periods change after just getting acupuncture. With homeopathy, you're going to use an essence like made in a pharmacy of a frequency medicine taken under the tongue, which stimulates your vital force, which then results in symptoms like disappearing. So if we're going to talk like, what on earth is the vital force? Does everyone have one? How do you even, affect the vital force? when you see at that moment of conception, right, sperm meets the egg, there's a little blast of energy. You see it under the microscope. That is energy, like in motion. It becomes your vital force. And it's this divine blueprint, this energetic blueprint, which goes on to grow a baby. And it's very intelligent, this force. It knows how to make, a baby's heart. It makes its ears, its eyes. It's like insane that something could be so smart to stitch that together without any conscious awareness from the mother. She does nothing. This blueprint takes control and it starts growing. So you've got, when babies are born, people sometimes forget that that force never leaves. It is constantly healing you, and it's really tied up mentally, emotionally, and physically. It is not just physical that it impacts the vital force. And that's something where modern medicine does not acknowledge at all. And that's where, see, the problem is, say for my sister, the issue for her was like mental, emotional. That's what kickstarted the infections every time, having sex with someone is like a vulnerable type thing. So if you've got an issue there mentally and emotionally with that, or you've got a history of trauma in that area, you can imagine that, having sex is going to kickfire the body to be like, oh, a response, and that can result in infection. So it's absolutely fascinating. So, and then you can use it for any issue that you've got, a chronic issue. And you as a homeopath, you look at like the family inheritance, because your energetics are largely inherited by your parents. If you had a parent who was extremely stressed or having panic attacks during their pregnancy with you in the belly, you're sharing your vital force with your baby. And so when that baby is born, it has already inherited like certain like energetic traits, and they can manifest in the child and then as an adult. So a lot of people have these really subconscious things going on that they're really not even aware of, and it dictates the decisions they make in life, how they feel about themselves, all of that. And so it's just knowing as an adult, when you sort of become conscious of this sort of stuff, and you're trying to figure out, why am I the way that I am? Why am I self-sabotaging? Say for you, like all the work you do, and like looking at, why do I do this? So much can be traced back through that and the things that we've experienced throughout life. And people just don't know that homeopathy is a system of medicine that can actually impact that can clear out what's inherited like energetically through these generational things. So, I mean, when I was in my 20s, if I heard someone saying they were working on like generational trauma or something like that, I would have like been like, righto. But like you get into your 30s and it's like, okay, people are realizing it's when you get to that stage and you're sort of figuring out like, yeah, why am I sort of stuck in this loop, or where are these negative patterns in my life coming from? And knowing that you can completely change them with homeopathics. And it's like, and really when I then changed my degree and like did homeopathy, it's realizing that this medicine was so far above like what it is now. So we used to have homeopathic hospitals all around the US, even in Australia. We had hospitals that people would go to when they were sick, and they would only get treated with homeopathic medicine. And it's like, how on earth do we not know that? The suppression of information about homeopathy has been next level. And it's because it is a threat. It's a threat to established medicine, and they know that. So it's like they do everything to keep us like not knowing about it.
Oh,
so
yeah.
Continue.
Yeah.
But
spot on.
Yeah.
It's literally everything, isn't it? They literally hide everything from us, and homeopathy is just another one to add to the list.
And because if you imagine like how differently we would live if we were not trapped in these negative cycles, whether it's like depression or anxiety or these like toxic relationships, all of these things that we work through with homeopathy, and people come out like free, are completely like connected to their spirit. It's like, and obviously the last couple of years we've seen so many people are completely disconnected from like life and who they are and how we're meant to live, whereas homeopathics really, when the energy in someone's body is aligned, like mentally, emotionally, spiritually, you see someone strong, we would not be able to be controlled to the level that we are. And so I just feel like homeopathy is the answer to so much of the current issue. But and so it's like in the physical sense, people are using this for like your first aid things. If you've got a fever, if you've got a flu, people use homeopathics. And recently we made these homeopathic first aid kits, which people are using obviously in their house. And they've gone absolutely bonkers because, as you know, a holistic, like at home, safe thing for parents to use, like, why would you want to use drugs when you can use the natural alternative first, which is so much, just really effective. So yeah, it is something, and it's up and coming. And I just can't wait to see how it goes in the next, 10 years. Because the last couple of years have really shaken people awake.
It has, yeah.
So it's really working in our favor. But
yeah, it is. And a lot of people are looking to alternative ways of dealing with their stuff because, well, we've seen the mainstream system now is pretty much a burning building, really, isn't it?
Oh man, it's like awkward now. They really, the last couple of years, the pressure that they put on people and just the forcing, I don't think they realized quite how it would backfire.
Yeah.
Because, now, and I know I see it in my practice, now you've got parents who are examining everything. It's not just the COVID gibbies that, people now don't want. Now they're like, wait a minute, these people, if you're going to push me like that, now people are like really pushing back. So I'm like, oh,
yeah. It's gonna be an interesting few years. What else would you like to share with us about your stuff, Mel? Yeah.
So say, like, it's just the scope of practice of like what you can use homeopathy for. So in general, when people are sick, say mentally, emotionally, or physically, you want to look at like sort of three areas. One is definitely what was inherited genetically, and so like the energetics of it. So some people sort of like downplay this area, like, oh, your what's that saying they always say? It's like, oh, your genetics load the gun, but your lifestyle pulls the trigger. And that is largely true, what you inherit is important. But there are so many kids who are sort of being born with already these like real deep susceptibilities. So say like your eczema, your asthma.
Yes.
All of these sorts of things, hay fever and allergies. Say, for example, that correlation, a lot of kids are born with it like straight off the bat. And yes, there can be a toxin overload, which really gets it going. But even in the kids that I've seen who were raised really holistically and didn't get the usual toxic burden, sometimes even then. And so you're looking at what have you inherited? And I would encourage anyone who's sort of like on their journey, like healing themselves, I would say really look at your parents and look at your grandparents. Usually it's sort of like three generations down.
Yeah.
But I'll give you an example of something that I treated recently, and which just showcases homeopathy is like outrageous, because it even for me was outrageous. I was treating a woman for hyperhidrosis, which is like sweaty hands, right? But like super sweaty hands. So like dripping sweat constantly. So she has to wipe her hands. So if she's ever going to shake someone's hand at work, it's like she's got to be wearing a dress or some clothing where she can really quickly and discreetly wipe the water, the sweat, which is like dripping. And then even to go straight for a handshake, she's like, it's still like a totally wet mess. So it's like, it's chronic, right? Like real serious. And always had it. And so as a homeopath, I'm like looking back, okay, when did it start? So if anyone listening is like sick, think, when did it start? What was going on at the time? Was it a really stressful time? Almost always there will be like a big stressor, or there'll be something, like, oh, I started taking the pill and then I went off it, and then this happened. So like if you've taken a medication, if you've taken drugs of any sort, whatever you've done, just look at the never well since, we call it in homeopathy. So look around that area. But for people who have had something since the moment they were born, like in this case, the client said, I had sweaty feet in the hospital. The nurses noticed like it was already sort of like dripping. So what that says is like her sympathetic nervous system is like on high alert. So she's already like the body's already quite stressed and doing this abnormal response to that. So she's dripping sweat. And so in that, I'm like, okay, so you had it since you were born. So I know I need to look at mum's life. Okay, tell me what was going on in pregnancy. Okay, well, mum's having panic attacks in her pregnancy with me. And so that alone to a homeopath is not enough, because we have like thousands of homeopathic remedies. And in terms of like what on earth even is in those things, the frequency. So what you do with homeopathy is you take an element from nature, let's say like a plant like belladonna, right? And you make that into a homeopathic remedy. So you are harnessing the frequency of that plant in a tincture, and then you are serially diluting it and making it more energetic in doing so. And they shake it in the pharmacy in these like very specific machines that sort of instills in it the frequency of it. And you might have seen, like, you know, the frequency of water. Have you seen those studies? Yeah. And where they look under a microscope at like how the frequency of water is changed from either like emotions even can change it, or something that they put in the water and then quickly remove, and then they take a photo of it. They can see that the molecular structure of the water has completely changed in response to something being dipped in it. So water is sort of magical on its own. Like, I mean, that's a whole other thing, but water is very smart. And yeah, so with the homeopathics, what you're actually ingesting is a frequency from nature, and it's very specifically selected for certain symptoms. So for anxiety, and a lot of people struggle with anxiety. I don't know, what would you guess the amount of people who have anxiety these days is percentage-wise?
Oh, be 80% of people have some form of anxiety, I reckon.
Surely. Not very many people can live like completely at peace.
Yeah.
And so in that, when she said like her mum's having panic attacks, I'm like, okay, but I really need to understand the nature of the panic attacks. I want to know why, right? Because that's the clues that you need in homeopathy to find the right medicine. So out of thousands, I need to know what imbalance am I really looking at. And so she said, oh, it's more to do with trauma from my mum's childhood. She was really excited to be pregnant, really excited to be having me, but she'd experienced, abuse in her sort of like maybe early, 10 years old, maybe. And so in that, it's like understanding, okay, so how was your mum feeling like when she's having these panic attacks? And with all this stuff going on, you really got to hone in and get really nosy about, okay, but how was she feeling when she's having these panic attacks? And it's like, she was angry, feeling rage about the things that happened to her when she was younger. And that was sort of triggering the panic attacks. I'm like, okay, all right. So you note that down. And then when I talked to this girl, she had said to me earlier in the consult, she's like, I really love sports. Like, I really love playing sport, but she's like, I don't do it because it brings out this really ugly side of me. And I'm like, okay. I'm like, tell me, because she's like a really sweet woman and she's like sitting in front of me. I'm like, what do you mean it brings out this ugly side? She's like, oh, I get like really competitive, but not just like normal competitive. She said it goes real ugly, like to the point where if I don't win, I am so angry. I almost feel like revenge against like the person who's won. And she's like, it's so like out of a normal response to losing. She's like, I actually just can't play sport because like I get out of control like that. And so she has never in her life had any reason. She's never been abused. She's never had reason to be angry, right? But she's like, I just have this sort of ugly underside of me that like I don't like to bring out. And she's like a woman of faith and like really beautiful. So she sort of like keeps a lid on it like that. But underneath there is this full-blown like anger, right? Not hers. And that's where we look at it with the homeopathics. And when given the homeopathics that her mum would have needed during pregnancy for all of the stuff that she was experiencing, where it was like angry, that's where this woman's symptoms and her body completely came into like relaxation. The sympathetic nervous system can start to relax. The hands can stop sweating, this sort of thing. So it's just like, that to me is just outrageous that she is carrying the emotional burden of like what her mum went through throughout her life, even though she herself, she's describing her life to me. She's like, I got two beautiful, loving parents. I've been given everything, and nothing ever happened. She's like, I never understood why I was that angry. And so when people are given homeopathic treatment, oftentimes you'll see what comes up is like this purging of like baggage, emotional baggage. So like people might be like, and a lot of people have suppressed grief over certain things that they have experienced in life. And it can be so suppressed, they can be so disconnected from it that they truly don't even realize it's there. But you take a homeopathic remedy that is going to come bubbling up to the surface, and you are just going to let that go. And when you look at these vibrational patterns, right, that people have got going on in their life, like we all do.
Yep.
And so let's say like getting into dodgy relationships. Relationships are like the best mirror, right? Because what you're attracting, it's like that is saying something about how you feel about yourself or your self-worth or whatever you need to work out to like attract in a good thing. And so when you look at women who just chronically attract in people who treat them poorly, whether it's like cheating on them or, you know, don't have boundaries or whatever it is that's so toxic, you can see, I guess, where the issues are, kind of thing. And that vibrational like repeating pattern, once you've done homeopathic treatment, you can completely break that. And I love seeing that as a practitioner. That's one thing that I really love, because a lot of people have issues in that area. And like you look 6 months after treatment, a year after treatment, and they're in a relationship that is like so genuinely loving. And it's like, oh, they're like, oh, finally. Do you know what I mean? I met this person. But like homeopathy is vibrational medicine. We are energetic beings. We are like a vibration. It's like freaking our eyes, you know, we can just perceive it. And that even everything that we hear is a vibration, and our body can just interpret that. So when people realize that like fully and completely, that everything in your life really is an expression of like, you know, what your vibration is saying, it gives you, I guess, so much power. I mean, at first for some people, it's probably like, what? You mean like I have created so much of this shit show? But once you realize, it's like, that's when you're in the power seat to really change it. And I find there are a lot of people out there, probably the sort of people who would listen to this, who are already switched on, right? They already get it. They know that this, what they're seeing is like an expression of like their internal, but a lot of people don't actually know how to shift it and change it. And I completely get that, because like definitely that was the case for me. Say like even in a relationship setting, totally me. And I was like, what, like, you know, why is this like thing that I want so much not able to come to me? It's like I'm already aware of it, but it's like, say for my parents, for example, my parents have been divorced 6 times between them, right? So growing up, so it's like one of them's been divorced 4 times, one of them's been divorced twice, and neither of them are married at the moment. So it's like that is a whole lot of shit that like subconsciously as a child, like I have seen and witnessed and been like, oh, as a child thinking like, do I? So it's like I'm growing up and I'm like 18 years old. I'm like, yeah, that's all I want, to like settle down and have a family and be in love and like it be, you know, happy, all that. But what I was saying and what I was thinking was very different to the vibration that I would have had going on. The vibration is like, holy shit, if I get married, there's a very big chance that I'm going to end up divorced, and that's going to be painful. And so like I would just hold that at arm's length without realizing it. Anyway, through homeopathics, it's like that vibrational level is affected, and the subconscious, I feel, you know, that's where things can really be turfed out. And it's like next, like I met Matt, I'm not joking, like I felt something shift in my mind, and it just, something just sort of clicked, and I was like, oh, that's weird. Literally that night started talking to Matt, and it's like then it ended up going well, where so that's what I sort of mean by like the vibrational thing, and just how quickly someone's life can change when they realize it. And it's like, it doesn't matter if you've been, I don't know, you know, like even self-sabotaging, it's like that moment of realization where you're like, why? Because most people just we don't understand why we're doing these things. Like, how did I get stuck here? Because we all want to stop like whatever negative things we're doing. But sometimes we really just actually don't understand where the trauma is. And like even those studies, you'd know the studies, like, you know, the prisoner of war's grandchildren. Did you see that stuff? And it's like they were really proving that trauma can be generationally passed down, because they were finding that the grandchildren of those grandparents who were in those prisoner of war camps, who were just like tortured, the grandchildren who never lived or experienced any of that have been diagnosed with PTSD sort of like since birth. And it really just shows that energetics coming down a family. And if you're looking at trauma, like there are some massive correlations. Say with in Australia, Matt, my husband, is Aboriginal, and it's like the things that come down from those years of like full-blown trauma, and like there's that sense of rejection. Even people who are born these days who've never lived and experienced that, it's as if they really are living and experiencing that. Yeah. So
It's interesting.
it's fascinating.
Yeah, I could just listen to you speak
Okay.
all day. It's just awesome. Just what you said about the love and the vibrational stuff. Like I'm currently going through that now, so
Mm.
it's
Yeah,
interesting,
yeah,
isn't
yeah.
it? It's
And
interesting, isn't it? Yeah, because I was yeah, it's not really about me, but yeah, I'm just going through it now. So what you were saying just was just speaking to me.
yeah,
I was
yeah,
getting
yeah.
goosebumps listening to it.
Yeah, and realizing, and whenever I talk to people, um, relationships is like it's an awesome one because it'll be like, for what reason, do you think you don't deserve it, or
Mm,
what have you seen, or what have you witnessed to make you think that it's like not going to be safe and good, and just breaking down those little walls to it. And it's like that's relationships. And
yeah,
then you go like to the work sense, and safe. Okay, so my parents did not give me a good start on the relationship
same here.
sector. Yeah. And but then say, and all of us are like going to have our areas that are going to be our susceptible weak spots, whether it's physically, we've all got weak spots,
Mm,
but then mentally and emotionally, we've all got weak spots, but we've also all got strengths. What are the areas that were modeled to us that were awesome? And so say in business, and in life success and that sort of stuff, I can say like from my parents, what I witnessed there was such a like, you can be or do or have anything in a work sense, like that sort of business success, and attracting in good patients, and that level of like financial success. And when you look at people, you know if people grew up poor or in a family where there wasn't a lot of money, or parents were genuinely fearful about having enough, that can leave with the kids, even this sort of like poverty complex of like, and the fear and the
mm,
anxiety around money. And so it's like you look at that vibrational circuit, and that can certainly be passed down too. And then so it's so interesting with homeopathy, because when you look at our homeopathic remedies, you will see distinctly listed under some of them extreme fears of money, like extreme fears of poverty. And when you look like homeopathically, even in the romantic side of it, in each of these different vibrational profiles, let's say like your Nat Mer, they have a massive fear of rejection.
mm,
So they are often the people who like pine over like a beautiful relationship, and it's like all they want,
yeah.
but their fear of rejection is so strong that they naturally put this wall up, don't let people close. So scared are they of getting hurt that they totally keep it away. And so they go through life like desiring this thing so much that they just cannot allow in. Do you need me to say
That
all
is
of that,
me.
man?
Well, that
And
was
then,
me.
yeah, yeah.
Holy shit.
And then it's so interesting because you look at the other characteristics of people in this profile, and certain things that might stand out for them is they feel distinctly better when they are by a body of water. So if they're at the beach, or they go on holidays where they're like near the water, they feel in themselves better physically, mentally, emotionally. That's like, oh, their body just relaxes.
Mm,
Or like for the women, they can be really prone to fluid retention. Or if you ask them, what things do you crave? What would you eat? If you could eat anything, what would you go for? And they're going to be more likely, 100%, they crave salt. Whereas in these other like homeopathic profiles, the people might crave chocolate, they might crave something else. And it's like, when you look at all of the weird and wonderful tendencies like about someone, and
mm,
it all points you towards this medicine, and when I give them that homeopathic remedy, oftentimes I mean shit can hit the fan as soon as they take it, because it's like you've given their vital force a
yep.
massive stir.
Mm,
So the body's like waking up, and it's like dusting off its feathers. So say for me, the first homeopathic remedy um I took it when I was at uni. So it was like that homeopath had like cured my sister's chronic issue. And then I was like, oh, okay, well, I'm going to book in with you for fun. Because even though I don't have a whole lot going on, I just want to see if this works. Since I'm like going to be studying this now, let's do this.
yeah.
And so he gave it to me. I took one dose at uni, had a raging headache. And I'm not like susceptible to headaches usually. So unless I was hungover, and I was like, oh my gosh, real bad headache that night. Oh, that night, actually, this is kind of funny. So a lot of my issues were caught up in around that like mental, emotional sphere with my parents divorcing. And as a kid, taking that really hard, I felt really stressed and like a lot of suppressed grief over it. And not so much about them separating, but I guess the ugliness that can come with parents who are separated and not getting on. And I took on like heaps of that stress as a kid, which oftentimes like the oldest child is the one that does that. Do you know what I mean? The more responsible, or like, you know, trying to protect the other siblings from like, oh, and so you sort of become this like, I'm just going to keep everything cool so that like my parents aren't fighting and they're not angry, and just it's a lot of stress for a kid to take on. And that night I went home from uni and I lived at home with my siblings and my mum, but I'm still like, I don't know, 20 something, early 20s. And just out of nowhere at dinner, it was sort of like my mum has said something completely innocent, and I have just sort of like blown up deluxe and gone downstairs crying. My mum's like, what on earth is like going on with like Melisaa?
Yeah.
Comes downstairs and I'm just like hysterically crying. And I'm like, you know, I did not even connect this to the homeopathics, because at that point I didn't really understand how it worked.
Yeah.
So I did not. And I'm down there and I'm saying, Mum, do you remember this time? And you were going to drop me at Dad's house and blah, blah, blah. And I'm like,
Oh, wow.
and I'm going on, and my mum's like, you know, where is this coming from? And it was the first time, I think, and then my mum like apologized to me about, you know, the amount of stress that it would have been as a kid. And I think it was the first time that I actually heard her apologize and actually felt it. You know, like sometimes parents can say like, oh, you know, I'm sorry, like for XYZ, but if you don't take that on and really let it go, well, you're going to carry that baggage with you forever. And a lot of us have had things happen to us that, you know, wrongs, you know, whether it's, you know, abuse or like anything that's happened, or a parent who you felt like never loved you, except you. A lot of people are holding on to things, you know, deeply from childhood. And so then that was with my mom, and then I went back upstairs and finished my dinner and things were fine. But yeah, still had that headache. The next day I woke up, I had cold sores all over my lips, like never before, everywhere. And I had been prone to cold sores throughout my life. I usually used to get one, you know, once a month maybe. And I was like, holy crap, what the, and had a head cold, which we know, you know, getting a flu or something is your body trying to detox. That's sort of what it does. And so I also had a head cold, and I was like, holy shit. Went to uni the next day and I bumped into the lecturer who was also a homeopath who'd given me this remedy. And he's like, how you going? And I was like, oh yeah. I was like, oh, I'm actually like not too well today. I've got blah, blah, blah going on. And then he's like, oh, you know, that's probably from the remedy. And I was like, what? I was like, oh, okay. And then he said, yeah, how'd you feel last night? And I was like, oh, well, actually, I had like a bit of a blow up. And he said, what was the nature of it? What was that? And I said, oh, well, you know, and I explained to him, and he's like, well, that sounds all really logical, doesn't it? You know, your body's turfing up this crap. And anyway, just remarkable that it drops under the tongue, one dose, that it could do that to my body. I just thought, what the hell? And just like so smart, because your vital force knows where the pain is. It knows where the unresolved, you know, things in your body are. And it has to come out. Like chronic symptom suppression, you know, we do it in like so many ways. Like we eat to not feel, we drink to not feel, we do any self-sabotaging things to not feel. We pathologically work to keep ourselves so busy so that we don't feel. I mean, even the things that look positive, a lot of people are using it just as a coping mechanism to like not feel. And I guess like, yeah, you get to this age now and you really start to comprehend that the feeling of it, that is the healing. And it can feel ugly and it can hurt, but ultimately the numbing, whatever you're doing to numb yourself, that's going to lead to more destruction and more pain than actually just feeling what the original trauma was, or whatever it was that you're trying to run away from. And I guess a lot of us just don't realize what we're running from. And so that therein lies like that internal work, that trying to get to the real root of it. Where did this start? And yeah, that's where I find homeopathy so fascinating, because so often it will do it, whether you're conscious of it or not. Because a lot of people have not made those conscious like links to their pain and stuff. But
wow, that was awesome. Oh, I wish I'm gonna like cut that up and put that as like a reel, because that was awesome.
Yeah, no,
pretty much describe my last few years too, about with like my journey as well. It's just like you're speaking my language.
yeah,
And hopefully this
yeah.
resonates with a lot of people. And
Mm,
yeah, and we'll put your stuff down the bottom where people can find you.
mm.
And
Yeah,
yeah,
it's
hopefully you're not too busy, because they might get some people that are going to reach out after this.
yeah. And it's just like, even like the homeopathics is one part, right? So like I do love it as like the catalyst, but so often it's like just the trigger to the healing. Like, yeah, it brings it up,
Yeah.
but then taking that, people being conscious of you know, like everyone's looking for like a savior, you know what I mean?
Yes.
Everyone's looking for a guru or even a practitioner or a doctor or anyone to be like, oh, help me, like, you know, I'm really stuck. And it's like the biggest piece that I would give anybody is like, you don't actually need anyone else. And like some modalities can help, like for sure homeopathy can help, but it's going to be all in you. And whether you meditate and you find those like little pain points and you can deal with it yourself, because a lot of people, yeah, they can't get in to see someone, or they can't afford to be doing like expensive therapies, or they're looking at all these biohacking things and thinking like, oh, I would do it if I could, you know. But it really is, everything that you need will just be within you. And this is how, you know, like Joe Dispenza, you know,
Yes.
that sort
Yes.
of work. Yeah. And it's like, they don't need anything outside of them, and they can have these miraculous healings. And it's because the energy, you can consciously put your energy into the body and like healing it. And so people, I mean, most people probably listening to this already know it, but your body is energy before it is physical matter. And even Einstein, like, he died showing all of this, and it's so fascinating, the whole quantum realm and how where we come from, all of that is sort of tied into it. But knowing that you are energy first, that your body is energy before it is pathology, you can really understand how you can use your energy and your consciousness to heal yourself.
Yes.
And I think for some people, they need knowledge, and they need to understand that that is true, and then they can put their heart into sort of doing it. But it's hard for people who don't honestly believe that, or don't actually know that. They don't know much about energy, because like, we've grown up with this Western medical model where we actually think, oh, perhaps our body is actually just faulty and malfunctioning and not actually capable of that level of healing. But anyone can access it. And many people have. So it's just, yeah, what a journey. But yeah, really, yeah, I love it.
Where do you see the world being in the next few years, Mel?
Oh, so it's funny, right? I feel like everyone, I don't know about you guys, but I feel like throughout COVID, I was like very much like, oh, no, pushback, right? Like, and honest with people and about that. And then there was this massive swing where like all of a sudden I felt that, you know, God spoke to me. It was like, all right, now we've all resisted that. Now we need to get busy building and actually creating that solution. Because, you know, there's a lot of pointing out what's wrong, but that only is going to get us so far. We need to start building what's right. And we've got so many people now who are keen to build that future. And I know for me, my biggest motivation is like, I've got 3 baby boys, like the world that they grow up and inherit. Like, I want to be a part of creating that for them, so that when I die, you know what I mean, they will be surrounded. And just that that sort of feeling. And then I feel like a lot of people had that feeling at the same time, because I noticed like a shift for everyone. And yeah, so in that, where do I see it going? Perhaps like a bit rocky for a while more, while people continue to wake up to the reality of it. But I think once people really grasp it, I think we can create an awesome future where, you know, we can be taught these things at school. Do you know what I mean? Your program, if you get that into schools, it's like, these are the things that people need to know, because this is what's like railroading our lives. This is why people are overdosing on drugs, like left, right, and center at the moment. It's horrific. This is why, you know, a probably 80%, like you said, so many people are medicated for anxiety and depression because this world, you know what I mean? It to them just looks so unstable.
Yeah.
But yeah, I see a very bright future. I see freedom, and a lot of this stuff, say, like, I have loved what, you know, you and Dale and other people like that, the information that they've put forward in regards to, like, especially the you know, like, Indigenous wisdom, and in terms of us all looking out for each other. Like, we can't keep this more competitive. It has to be cooperation, and we have to look after all of us, like everyone on the bottom, and, you know, people. We've got to work together.
I agree.
And I think if we can raise a generation of kids who don't look at each other as competition, but look at each other as, like, you know, we're like cooperative components in this universe, and like we need to, like, help and love each other, and we can raise up, you know, generations of people where, yeah, that's where I see the future going. And a lot of the more, like, localization of things, and just, yeah, healthier systems and ways of life. But
I love it. That's so powerful.
And
it's like, you got to heal yourself first before you can heal the world too.
So true.
And this, like, future that we all want, it's like people's stuff's coming up, so they're looking to people like us to help them. And once they heal themselves, that's that vibration and that mirror that you talk about. It's putting that back out there.
And it's so funny, right? You know, the whole microsm and the macrosm, like, you hear about that, but it's not until you personally get to a point in your life where you actually realize, it really sinks in for you that, like, actually, yes, the world that I am seeing is a reflection of, like, how I think and feel, and I must heal. And I know for myself, I am constantly, like, you know, these new layers and, like, new levels of freedom in myself and my life. And I've never before seen the amount of people right now working on themselves.
Yeah, it's unreal,
you know,
isn't it?
The generations before us, like our grandparents and our parents, it just was not so much the done thing. It was like down, suppress, don't think about it, don't talk about it, get on with it. And all of a sudden we've got, like, I feel like it's mainly 30-year-olds in the 30 to 40s, people who are, like,
late 20s.
Like, are you young? You're so young.
Yeah, I am, aren't I?
Yeah. So you must have become a teacher real quick.
Yeah, I did uni for like 5 years. I
failed
a couple of classes and got through, but I did uni for 5 years, and I did some casual work, and then this thing happened. And
injury?
Nah, I just didn't take it.
That thing. Yeah.
That thing.
Totally. Yeah.
And then so then I started my journey, and here I am talking to you.
Yeah. And, like, divine, right? Like, you
Absolutely.
probably wouldn't even want to go back to teaching. It's like,
not unless I'm changing it, putting my program in there. Having like a bush school set up, getting kids back in touch with nature.
Yeah. And there's, like, nature, right? You know, when we're going to talk about energy medicine and all of that, nature is like your natural step. You want to, like, go forward 20 spots, get back in nature, because she is the best healer. Get on the ground and let that energy, all we're talking about is, like, energy and vibration. And when nature, you know, even the sounds of the birds, they say, like, relaxes someone's nervous system, because, like, that is how we evolved in nature. And what we're living now is so artificial that it's actually so much work for people to be healthy. Whereas if we could get back to those roots, it wouldn't be so hard.
No, you're right.
Yeah. But bush school, oh my gosh, yes.
Come
to Queensland and start one, please.
That's actually the dream, by the way. That is the dream.
Queensland?
Absolutely. Getting them everywhere. Good. Victoria, Queensland.
Yeah.
That is my dream. And I feel like I'm on the right track to achieving it.
Yeah. Because and it's just knowing too that, like, your vision, I feel like it's so much easier to bring it in is when you know that the world needs it. It's like, you've got something to offer. The world needs it. The world will benefit from it. This is like, it just can't be stopped.
Nah.
Yeah. And you imagine all the things that you can teach in that school, like health, but like connection with other kids and community. That's another thing these days that really the last couple of years has highlighted, but like how deeply we need each other and that connection, because it's easy to live a life of isolation. It's easy to be single and be like, oh yeah, like I've got no issues, or like cut a friend off if like, you have issues, but like we're made for connection and that like ups and downs of being human and just going through it together.
Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
I
Oh,
love that.
it.
I love that too.
I can't wait to see you start it.
Thank you. I reckon you're gonna be part of it anyway.
Yeah. Let's see it.
You'll be part of it anyway because I'll be sending some children to you for some homeopathy.
Oh, can you even imagine? I'm like, oh, what a life they could have, like different to like the trajectory that they're on.
Yeah, I know.
To like heal at that young age. Like we should totally have that.
I agree. And we will.
Yeah, that's it.
Steps,
Eyes on it.
Baby steps, but we'll get there.
Totally.
So, Mel, thank you for this awesome chat. Just to wrap it all up, I sometimes ask my guests for a mum joke, but because you haven't got one for us, we can leave it on a affirmation and a final word for people that I ask my guests too, that when they come on, that if all that resonated with them and they go, oh, gee, that's me, or gee, I'm stuck, or gee, I'm lonely, gee, I'm currently single right now, so maybe you can put a message out there as well for the single people. But just something to leave our viewers with that they can take away and go and heal and start their healing journey, I guess.
If I was to say one thing, it would be just that everything that you already need is within you. There is not one external thing that can do what everything that you have can do. And so anyone right now, if they're working on one key area, let's say for anyone looking for a good relationship or they're looking for that job or that breakthrough in like one area, it would just be knowing that the moment that you can actually just allow it in, you have to let go of any resistance that you have to it, any fear to it, and you just allow it in. It could be here like tomorrow. It is supernatural. What I have seen over like, the last 5 years, especially, it is supernatural. And you might have been wanting this thing and trying so hard for 10 years. Let go of that in the moment. Know that you are completely worthy of that thing that you want and just let it in. That's really.
That's so powerful.
All right.
We'll have a chat. We'll have a chat off air about why that meant so much to me, what you just said there.
Love it. So good to chat
awesome.
with you, Nathan. Thank you so much for taking the time.
Such an awesome chat, Mel. We'll have to get you back on in the new year or just before Christmas, I think, because I'm going to have a lot of people asking questions about some of the information you've shared. Yep. I'll put your stuff down the bottom. I'll put your email address in there so they can email your assistant who I was talking to the last few weeks.
For sure.
And I hope you share it too on your platforms and really get this information out to as many people as we can. And this is why we're here. I feel so. I'm so grateful to have you on today, and I'm getting you back on, I reckon.
Love it. Love it. Thanks, Nate. Such a pleasure.
All right. So what we'll do is I'll stop recording now. So thank you, everyone. Awesome. Mel, thank you for coming on.